But Harold, good morning.
Yeah, how you going, Danny? Great to see you, and great to be here in the
yeah.
heart and soul.
In the heart and soul. I used to say the bowels, but some people thought it was a bit off-putting. So, Dover Court. You're going to tell us about. They've written a book. It's a great book. People will be able to get this book. Toowong's Hidden Treasure and Its People. And Harold's lively and tight writing style, his willingness to tell the stories of associated people and events ensures there's a story on every page. Let me tell you, people will not believe that Dover Court, Toowong's Hidden Treasure, is picturing here. It is a massive, what architecture, Harold, but how big is the property?
Yeah, it's 8 blocks. It's 8 blocks currently right in the middle of Toowong.
And it's still there.
It's still there. It's a beautiful home.
It is unbelievable. What about the architecture? What do they call this stuff around here?
They're called verandas, then.
Funny man. No, the steel stuff around there. What is that called?
Yeah, the steel stuff. That's really good.
It's called anyhow. But tell us the story.
Yeah, well, I'm going to tell you about the Ipswich connection to that house.
Right.
And it all starts out at Biggs Camp, west of Ipswich. And that's Biggs Camp is more than just the first stop on Queensland's first railway, which was opened in 1865. Now, Biggs Camp was actually has so many links to significant history in Queensland, Australia, and world figures, in fact. And that's through the Big family. And that's, of course, the Big family lived in Dover Court for 90 years, up until just last year.
Is that right?
Yeah, now, it all started out at Biggs Camp, which was the headquarters of Francis Bigg. And, of course, today, Biggs Camp is called Grantchester.
Right.
But Francis Bigg, in 1840, was among the very first settlers here in the Moreton Bay district. He was a hero of a shootout with 3 bushrangers, which became the inspiration of the famous Australian book Robbery Under Arms.
It's flaming out.
That's Francis Bigg, and he was also a member of the very first Queensland Parliament in 1860. Now, Queensland only happened thanks to his uncle John Bigg. He was the Royal Commissioner who inquired into the running of the New South Wales penal settlement or penal system, and in 1822, Danny, the Bigg report recommended that a settlement be established up here in Moreton Bay for the worst of convicts. So Queensland and Brisbane only happened because of the Bigg family.
The Bigg family. That was big, and the time is the time.
Yeah, that's right. And there's another Bigg family. In fact, this is his cousin Arthur Bigg, who's also called the first Baron Stanford. Now, he was a private secretary to both Queen Victoria and her grandson, King George V. Now, the Baron is portrayed in the Netflix series Peaky Blinders, which no doubt you've enjoyed.
Yeah, love the Netflix.
Yeah. And his grandson, Michael Adine, or Lord Adine, became the private secretary to Queen Elizabeth II, back when she first became queen with Prince Philip, of course, and he's portrayed in the other Netflix series, The Crown. So the Bigg family is everywhere. And of course, let's talk about Dover Court, the house in Toowong, because that was built in 1865. That was the same year that the railway arrived in Biggs Camp.
Wow.
Now, until last year, for 90 years, like I said, the Bigg family lived right there.
Yeah.
And that included Matthew Bigg, who married the granddaughter of Queensland Premier Sir Samuel Griffith. And it was, of course, Sir Samuel was the first Chief Justice of Australia. Now, Matthew Bigg served as an officer in the Australian Intelligence Corps during the Second World War. And somehow he brought home a stack of souvenirs from special duties overseas. Now, these souvenirs, Danny, included a cache of Japanese hand grenades that were only discovered under the house by his son, John Bigg, just a few years ago.
Just a few years ago, the grenades.
Yeah, that's right. And it was, the ones with sort of the round tin with the wooden handle.
And they'd be starting to deteriorate.
There was a whole box of them. And when I metal detected around the house recently, I found a 1930s Japanese bronze coin that he also brought back from the war.
Which you've got in the book here.
Exactly right. The story's there. In fact, the Ipswich's Bigg family from Biggs Camp or Grantchester, that the book tells a story of the connections to historical events, places and people. 3 monarchs, the founding of Queensland, the book Robbery Under Arms, and now I'm proud to say, Danny, my book Dover Court.
And where can we get a book with this book?
Hop online to historyouthere.com and you can get it right away.
Dover Court, Toowong's Hidden Treasure and Its People by Harold H. Peacock. I cannot believe how big the property is. It's in the middle, it's near Miskin Street, which I think is near West Rugby Union Football Club, Miskin Street. I think that's the street.
Oh, well, it's a few minutes walk from there, but it is right in the middle, but you can't see it because it's behind it's one of the best secrets.
It's behind a fence, is it?
A fence and a hedge, yeah.
But what about, it's a magnificent, now the old bloke lived there until his 90s and he's still alive.
Yeah, he is, and they had to sell the house last year after 90 years because it just needed some work and he couldn't, he's getting on a bit. but it's certainly being bought by a really sympathetic owner who is restoring
Not
it.
a developer.
Absolutely not.
It is a magnificent. Look, I wished I could have come with you to do your metal detecting, because it fascinates me. And there's in so many of these lovely old houses when I was growing up in Brisbane, particularly around Kangaroo Point. The bludgers, Joe Bajocchi and your mates, knocked them down.
Well, this one's still
And
there.
you were telling me at Southport, some of the houses around there were made in the 1800s.
Yeah, the 1800s,
and then
they're
they
gone.
just knock them down. It's an outrage. Tom, stay away from Coolangatta. We've got a lot of those sort of old houses up the back of Coolangatta. We don't need any more high-rise. So get this book, Dover Court, Toowong's Hidden Treasure and Its People, and it's a wonderful book. Go to historyouthere.com.au.
No, just.com.
Just .com. And don't forget, coming up in the next, we'll be talking to Harold about Ernest William Weeks, who he has managed, you've got to give him some credit, to get Ernest William Weeks onto the Australian War Museum on the Roll of Honour. We'll talk about that next coming up.